All right, so I watched this video clip from this, I don't know, financial coach, business coach, Myron Golden, and I'll share that in a minute. But I was reading something in the book of Genesis that I thought was just really cool, and I want to share it with you. So if you look at Genesis 2:12, okay, it says the gold of the land is good, right? Okay, so at first I thought, all right, well, it's just an interesting, kind of detail or whatever, but I decided to look up the Hebrew word for good that was used to describe that gold. Okay. And what's really interesting about this, I went back to Genesis 1, and you see it says, whatever, in Genesis 9, God called the dry ground land.
1:9?
Yeah.
Okay.
1:9. So God called the dry ground land, the water seas, and he saw that it was good. Okay. And then we go over to, he produced seed-bearing plants, trees, and God saw that it was good. God set the lights in the sky, and God saw that it was good. God created sea creatures, every living thing. God saw that it was good. Made all kinds of wild animals, livestock, small mammals. God saw that it was good. God looked over all he had made, and then he saw that it was very good. Okay, that same word to describe all those things they made, all those creations, that same Hebrew word, good there, is the same word that is used in Genesis 2:12. The gold of the land is good.
Interesting.
So I found this to be very interesting when you consider the fact that God made all of these other creations, and then he made gold, and he described them all as good.
Yeah.
So for the people who inherently think that, money is evil, I think this forces you to consider some things, right?
Right.
Because before money became all complicated, before it became a source of shame and, pride, before like the first coin was ever minted, God designed gold and specifically called it good.
Right.
And so I don't believe that he ever intended wealth to be a problem. He designed it to be a good gift. And the problem isn't with the money, but it's with our relationship with it. And that's what we need to get straightened out. Anyway, I just thought that was fascinating and a really powerful insight because I never considered that.
Yeah, I haven't either. And especially like where my mind starts going, and I don't know that I can prove this biblically. I haven't looked into it, honestly, because we're just having this conversation now. But the idea that all those animals and stuff, first of all, he gave man dominion over them, but also they were to serve man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Rather than it being the opposite.
Yeah.
And so, I would be interested to like look at some more things like that. Like, why were the animals created? Well, and all those things, all the things, they were created as a blessing. Like when I think about trees, in the fall, leaves change colors. God didn't have to make it like that. So it would be a blessing to us. Yep. And it's just that we've chosen gold as the currency rather than
and that's
beautiful
exactly
leaves.
That's
you know
exactly
what I mean?
it. It's like you cannot serve mammon and God. Like,
right.
And I love the way Jesus described that. It's like, it wasn't you shouldn't do this. It was like, you can't.
Right.
You can't serve that master and this one. It's like just a statement of fact.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of things where he's like, yeah, you shouldn't do this or whatever. But like, this is a statement of fact. And therefore, like what you're saying is like, we have an opportunity are we going to serve it or are we going to use it to serve us? And anyway,
and as we serve God and his purposes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so I want to drop you into this clip from Myron because he breaks down some more crazy details about from the book of Genesis about God's original design for money and wealth and all this stuff that I thought was fascinating. And so I'd love to hear what you think about it, but I'm going to drop into this video now.
God's original design for money. The first thing I've got to do is I've got to figure out what represents money, or better yet, what is the substance on earth that physically represents wealth and has since the beginning of time. Well, money, that's a good guess, but it's before money. It's pre-money. It's a physical substance. What is it? It's gold. Gold. So one of the things I wanted to do, I wanted to find out what God has to say about gold. And I figured if I could find out what he says about it from the beginning, I might know a little something about wealth that I didn't know before. And so here's what I discovered. I said, I wonder how many times gold, the physical substance that has from the beginning of the world, like represented wealth. By the way, have you ever wondered this? You probably haven't because you're not as geeky as me. But I thought, well, Gold is gold in color. Copper is gold in color. Brass is gold in color. So why is gold more valuable than copper or brass? Has anybody ever wondered that, or is it just me? Okay, nobody's ever wondered that. It's just me. Okay, so now, now we know the rest of the story. Okay, anyway. But I wondered, like, what makes gold so valuable? But the thing that makes gold so valuable, so much more valuable than copper, so much more valuable than brass, is both copper and brass both corrode. Gold does not corrode. So it's a picture of eternity. It's a picture of something that lasts, that outlasts the elements. But anyway, so how many times is gold mentioned in the book of Genesis? I thought, well, it's got to be in there at least 500 times. Guess what? It wasn't in there 500 times. Gold is mentioned in the book of Genesis exactly 8 times. That is significant. Why? Because every number has significance. 1 is the number of the unity of God. 2 is the number of separation or holiness. 3 is the number of God. 4 is the number of the earth. There's 4 directions on the earth: north, south, east, and west. There are 4 seasons on the earth: spring, summer, winter, and fall. There are 4 corners of the earth. Wait a minute, I thought the earth was round. When was the last time you saw something round with 1 corner? But we talk about the 4 corners of the earth. We talk about the 4 winds of the earth. On the earth, a lot of times when principles show up on earth, they show up in 4s. Like there are 4 levels of value on the earth. There are 4 levels of teaching for 4 levels of learning. There are 4 levels of parenting for 4 levels of child development. I don't want to get into all of that, but every number has significance. 5 is the number of grace, or a gift. 6 is the number of man. It's also the number of falsehood. 7 is the number of completion. You already knew that. 8 is the number of infinity, eternity, abundance, and the new beginning. In fact, if you take an 8, turn it on its side, it is the symbol for infinity, and yet God took the substance that represents wealth, put it in the book of Genesis, the first book in the Bible, exactly 8 times. That's fascinating. And then God used the adjective to describe what he created in Genesis chapter 1. He said it was good. He did that 7 times in Genesis chapter 1. The 8th time he used the adjective good was in Genesis chapter 2, verse 11 and 12, where he said there's gold. The gold in that land is good. There's gold in that land. The gold in that land is good. Now, in the book of Genesis, here's what we see. I'm going to God's original design for wealth. This is going to blow your mind. It blew my mind when I discovered it. Here it is. God's original design for wealth is for his people. What does that mean? Well, what it means is every time we find gold mentioned in the first book in the Bible, every time, there are no exceptions to what I'm about to say, gold is always mentioned in conjunction with God's people. What? Wait, what? Okay. The first time it's mentioned in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. Genesis chapter 2, verse 11 and 12. It's mentioned as providence for God's people. What does that mean? That means providence means to provide in advance. God put the gold in the garden before he put the man and the woman in the garden to enjoy the gold. Now, interestingly enough, there are only 2 people in the garden. There's no stores. There's nothing for sale. There's nothing to buy. But yet, God put gold there, but he didn't just put it there and hide it. He put it there and told us it was there. And then not only did he tell us it was there, he also told us it was good. If there are 2 people in the garden, there's nothing for sale, there's nothing to buy, the 2 people are married to each other, and food is free, why do they need gold in an environment like that? Because God wants us to understand that opulence and abundance are natural in the environment for the children of a king. So that was the first thing, providence for God's people. The second time gold is mentioned, Genesis chapter 13, is mentioned as a possession by God's people. Possession by God's people. Okay, what is that? Genesis chapter 13, verse number 2. It says, and Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. It's a possession by God's people. Now, interesting thing about Abram later, his name later became Abraham. Abram was the father of the faithful. He was the friend of God. He was the patriarch of the faith. Whatever you want to call him, he was that dude. Right? Well, the first person that the Bible tells us was rich was Abraham. First time the word rich is used in the Bible, it's not used in conjunction with some evil king. First time it's used, it's talking about Abram. Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. I got a trick question for y'all. Was Abram rich? I said it was a trick question. No, he wasn't rich. He was very rich, right? Okay. And I love the fact that the Bible doesn't just tell us he was rich. It tells us how rich he was. He was very rich. But it doesn't just tell us how rich he was. It tells us how he was rich. It says he was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. Why did he do that? Because he knew some of the people who love to over-spiritualize everything. Well, it doesn't mean he had money. It just means he had a rich and noble heritage. That ain't what it said. It said he had some gold, had some silver, had some cattle. Okay, so possession by God's people. The third time it's mentioned as proof of God's blessing on God's people. What is that proof? Well, Abram sent his servant Eleazar to go find a wife for his son. Long story short, he finds this girl. He says, hey, my master has been blessed by God to be very rich, and he's old, and he has a son. And everything that he has, he's going to give to his son. And by the way, he's so rich. Here, mama, here's some gold for you. Hey, brother, here's some gold for you. Hey, brother, here's some gold for you. Here's some for you. And by the way, the young lady, he's looking for a bride. Here's some gold for you. And by the way, you're going to be his wife. So what do you think? Is it a good deal? She's like, okay, I'll take you up on that offer, right? And then her mom tries to talk her into waiting a week. Baby, don't you want to wait a week? I mean, this all happens so fast. Don't you just want to wait a week and take your time to make up your mind? I can imagine Rebecca saying, Mama, did you hear what this man just said? A rich man has a son who's receiving everything. He's looking for a bride for him, and you want me to wait a week so somebody else can take my place? Mama, I got to go, right? So she's out of there. So proof of God's blessing on God's people. It's not the last time, but it's one of the last times it's mentioned. And this is a provision for God's people. This is the only time it's mentioned in conjunction with somebody who's not one of God's people, and that's Pharaoh. It says that Pharaoh took the gold ring off his finger, put it on Joseph's finger after he dropped it on the floor, and then he took the gold chain off his neck, put it on Joseph's neck. So a provision for God's people. So what that shows me is it shows me that God's original design for wealth is for his people. Now, I know what you're thinking because I thought the same thing.
Interesting. Right? Yeah. Have you ever heard that?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I had never dug into it the way he has, which I love that he has. I love getting to glean off of someone else's revelation like that. But I think this is one of those things that might be controversial in that I don't think everyone is comfortable with the idea that God wants to lavish a lot of good things on us. But I remember talking to you about when we think about heaven and the streets of gold. And I was like, I used to always be like, well, that's cool that God put gold in heaven because there's gold on the earth. And then I was like, well, that's actually super weird that I think that it wasn't that it's that way and not the other way around. Yeah. Like he put gold on earth, which is actually a representation of what is in heaven.
Yeah.
Like for us to like have a little taste of that on the earth.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that it's so valuable here because it is a resource straight from heaven.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting. And we don't have time to do it on this episode, but I'm writing something right now, which will probably become a podcast where I'm looking at this side of what he's talking about and then also contrasting that and comparing that with, what I think a lot of believers are more familiar with is all the warnings about wealth in the New Testament.
Right.
And that's a tricky thing to like navigate through. But this is also something that I've wrestled with personally for a long, long time. And, and I think, simply put, like the place that I've landed with this that I feel really good about is the idea is that the wealth is never the issue. It's like, are you being a servant? Are you being a steward of it? Are you using it for God's kingdom and his purposes and fully obedient to him with it and all that stuff? And if that's the case, then I think you're in a good spot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, because I used to believe that the problem was that I would just that it was wrong for me to have a high salary or wrong for me for my business to earn a lot or something like that. And that's just not the case. Like,
right.
Because you can have a high salary, low salary, and not be submitted to God. And honestly, like in many times or many ways, my lowest point of income coming in, I was far less submitted to God and less yielded and open-handed and trusting, of him. And so anyway, so I don't want to get on to that now. We'll save it for another episode, but I am excited to kind of talk about that and kind of break down the two sides because it feels contradictory. It feels like it doesn't make sense.
Right.
But
well, and I remember hearing someone speak a long time ago about God, there's gold on the earth and that is something that the earth values.
Yep.
Like it is worth something. You can say, oh, that's worth its weight in gold. There's a lot of references towards that because it is something that has been going on since the beginning of the earth. However, in heaven, gold is just the street.
Yeah.
It's the
Pavement.
thing that yeah. And, we see how the pavement is treated here. And I know things are going to be different in heaven and all that stuff. But what is striking me right now about this is we're putting too much stock in the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Like we're seeking the gold, which is just a little reminder that heaven exists.
Yeah.
But it's literally just the street in heaven. That's not the amazing part of it.
Yeah.
And what should we actually be chasing after? And what does God, I believe it's in Peter, one of the Peters,
One of the
where God talks about a gentle and a quiet spirit being of great value to God.
Yep.
And he's particularly talking about it in women. And I think that is really easy. What does that look like to have a gentle and quiet spirit? And what does it look like to chase after the things that he says are valuable rather than the pavement?
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine, like, I think it'd be funny if my kids were like fighting over a piece of asphalt. You know?
Yeah.
Like it's the same idea of like, well, okay. Maybe that was the road that, they grew up on, from the street that they grew up on or something like that. But it's like, really, or is that really the thing that you would fight after when there's so many other things that are of so much more value?
Much greater value.
Yeah.
For sure. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and everything we just kind of shared. But I would encourage you, because, and I'll say this from my own perspective of like having to, and honestly, like I think we all have to do this. Like money and the Bible is just a tricky intersection. And so I would encourage you to not, to go to the Bible, to study it out, and again, like we'll continue to share what we found in our own study, but do your own digging, and don't just depend on, well, I've heard this all my life, or I've believed this all my life. Like that's not how we build our theology off of what we have done all of our life. We have to build it off of the Word.
Right.
It can't be built off our experiences, which is another thing. It's like, well, this doesn't make sense because I've been broke all my life and therefore blah, blah, blah. Like that's not, like I've had many things where it's like it's been one way that didn't line up with the Word of God for years or decades.
Right.
That doesn't mean the Word of God is not true,
Yeah.
So that would be my encouragement, to dive in, dig in.
It just means we're missing something.
Yeah, we don't have a full understanding yet.
Yeah.
But let me know. Let us know. Send us an email or comment. I think if you're on Spotify, you can leave comments now, which is great.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
One of the reasons I'm liking that as a podcast platform. But that's all for today. If you haven't left us a review, we would appreciate it. And know that we love you. We're praying for you. You're awesome. And we'll see you soon.
Have a great day. I just learned about you last week. I purchased your book and read it in just a few days, and have since ordered 5 more to give to others. This is what Jason and Megan said after reading our book.
That's awesome. Way to go, Jason and Megan. We love that. And if you've enjoyed our book, you are welcome to do that and order 5 more for others as well. I would love to see that.
You can get it on Amazon, but we so believe that the church needs this message that if you can cover shipping, we'd love to cover the cost of the book and send you a free copy.
All you need to do is go to SeedTime.com/free to get yours.